to touch the credit cards. We don't want to take on that kind of risk, which traditionally PMSs have kind of done. So we just thought, why don't we find great partners who are specialists in this field, who will keep all of the credit cards safe for all the customers? Because if you look at the BA hack, if you look at the what went on with all of the major chains, essentially, you've got Starwood, Mandarin Oriental, these huge hacks of a lot of data being stolen away. I think that's the other part to a lot of this this innovation is actually the innovation of security and the fact that this kind of contextualization can actually really help drive a lot of security. And I think that's one of the things that I love about the Stripe platform, and especially about great products within that, like Radar. And I think it'll be better for you to explain.
You're doing actually a very good job, Richard. So, look, I think that the premise of Stripe, and as you say, we were founded by two Irish brothers, and their goal was to, the slightly techie terminology we use is to abstract away the complexity of payments. When I think about that and try to articulate, I think that kind of comes in lots of layers. One of those is simply, how does someone who's trying to run a business and take payments from their customers, how do they get their head around all of the different pieces of financial infrastructure and payment methods that they might have to connect to? So at one layer, we get rid of that. I think security is another kind of, I think of that of a layer of complexity that, frankly, you guys, your customers don't want to be in the business of having to worry about, especially when it comes to kind of payment data, because as you say, BA are not enjoying the headlines that they've had, recently as a result of that. And so I think taking away just some of that inherent, PCI certification and making sure that people aren't handling kind of raw credit card numbers and details, the technology exists such that nobody other than a payments company should be having to think about kind of dealing with that and kind of managing the complexity and, as you say, the risk that comes with that, because that's what we do for a living. I think the other aspect of security that is inseparable from that is that of fraud. It is the scourge of the payments industry for sure. And again, having to think about, how to deal with that when it's not your core business is just something that consumes kind of a lot of resources. And so when you're a technology-oriented company and you can bring to bear, machine learning models that can operate at gigantic global scale to say, right, the first time that, any given merchant presents a credit card from one of their customers for the first time, there's an 86% chance that we'll have seen that exact credit card somewhere on the Stripe network, somewhere in the world before, and we can take a couple of hundred signals like, when did we last see it? Where did we last see it? What did it buy? How frequently has it been used? All the way down to how long did the person that last used that credit card spend on the web page where they used it before they actually entered their card details, because all of these signals are very sophisticated means for identifying hacks and fraud. So as you say, we built some technology to manage that risk for ourselves, first of all, and thought, hey, wouldn't this be a good idea if we turned this into a product and made it available to our customers as well? And so that culminated in something called Radar, as you mentioned, which is, again, it's an inherent part of the payments platform, because the payments data is what allows you to do that with high fidelity.
Yeah. I think it's kind of pretty amazing to hear about Radar and then remind ourselves of the world we live in, because we're still in a world, we're sort of blinded by habit of this practice that I'm sure maybe people in the audience have, which is easy to sort of overlook. But not only do we live in a world of Radar, that's kind of supernova technology, but there's the everyday thing that we know about, which is putting your card into a chip and PIN terminal and making sure it's encrypted and all that kind of stuff. But in that same world, we live in a world where you can call up a hotel and say, I want to book a room, and they can say, okay, can you give me your 16-digit card number, please? And I also wouldn't mind the 3 numbers on the back and the expiry date, please. And it's it's a bit crazy. And I think that, the technology is there to solve that. And we had sort of fairly comic scenes in the Swedish, iZettle is a Swedish company, and so there's a strong engineering security conscience. and explaining to them that, well, our merchants actually want to have this feature where they can type in the card details and the expiry date and the thing. It was just like, they didn't understand. Like, how is this? We've been working to prevent this, this problem. So I think there are solutions not to do that. And actually what we do now is enable you to send a link so that the consumer can fill in their card details without giving them to you in real time. But there's tons of stuff like that, and it's such a good example of the chasm of sophistication that does exist and the kind of practices that still carry on if you don't elect to make the change.